Mic check, 1 2 1 2. What's up, guys? It's the Portuguese Mofo here, or Sam, and gonna do another terrain analysis video for Alpine Ridge. So, Alpine Ridge, right? Pretty self-explanatory, I dare say. It's gonna have a ridge in it. Don't know what a ridge is, right? Um, we're talking about a saddle, okay? And if you understand major, minor terrain features and even supplementary, right? Ridge being a major terrain feature like a saddle. What's the real difference between a ridge and a saddle? Because a lot of you will think of a ridge line for mountains, right? Which might have saddles in it, okay? But the ridge here, as we can kind of see right here in the middle, is a very small one. It's a very small ridge, all right? Okay, and just to look out in the distance, right, a lot of times people will reference a ridge line, right, for the mountains, right, as all of that, which you can describe as a ridge line. It is, right, but there's also a nice big fucking saddle, although actually I wouldn't consider this a saddle. It'd be more like a valley, right? Something more like up there, right, is a saddle, which we saw in the other terrain feature, right? So there might be a saddle within the ridge line. It is. I've always found that interesting. Very slight, I guess, technicalities, right? But we're calling this a ridge, right? It's a little bit, right, less pronounced, right? There's actually a little saddle going on. Oh, a little one, big. Oh, and then we come down and do another one, right? Okay, but we got the ridge, okay, and this is what the map is referencing, right? But that's not the only thing going on this map, is it? Nah, what is this? Well, as far as how this game is portraying, right, little ponds, I think, right, really we could probably think of it as more like marshland, but it really looks like, right, is some dried out river systems. Not to get into geology and that whole thing, but so we've got all these small pockets of water, and then we've kind of got like a box of trees with gaps in the middle, all right, of each of these corners of the box of trees, we'll call it, okay, and then we got these two little pockets in the middle. All right, and it kind of, right, this box of trees and this ridge, right, this is definitely where a lot of the fighting is going to happen in a normal game, okay? I don't think I've actually ever played on this map in a online battle. I'd have to go through all my replays, which are backed up right now on a different hard drive, which I do plan to pull them out periodically, make a video on them. It's good to go back and just see, right, study, but, right, I think, if I had to guess, right, you probably have one dojo that's in this area. I'm going to say right here, okay, just a guess, all right, you're going to have one that I would guess is probably in this little, we'll call it the saddle of the ridge, not really pronounced enough to be right, what you would identify as a saddle and as a true terrain feature, right? You would just call this a ridge all the way through. You wouldn't reference this little part as a saddle, but this is a little, maybe, depression, okay? And I think that's where that other one would be. And then I would, again, if I had to guess, right, it's probably like right in this pocket here for 3. But this is a big map. There might be 4 locations too. Or it seems like a bigger map. Someone could correct me on that if I'm wrong. But, anywho, right? So, a lot of this is going to be about controlling the ridge. And what do I mean by controlling the ridge, okay? Well, this is, first, a very obvious spot for cover. Alright? From matchlocks, get behind this, they can't shoot you. But I would think you want to control this ridge. You'd rather not be the one being caught, right, on the other side of the ridge as your opponent takes it. You'd rather control the ridge for many reasons, right? All right, let me just hit start battle just so I can like show troops, right? Like having matchlocks up here, great. If you can start the melee down in here, have matchlocks up here, holy fuck, dice them up. if you get really good, for some reason, you get your infantry here, you get a unit of matchlocks here, you get an expert one here, now you got 2 lines of matchlocks firing, and then you could have arrows behind, right? Because we got our archers, right? They can shoot with arc, they can shoot in dead space. Although it's better to see what you're shooting at, you know, they don't have to exactly see what they're shooting at. So they can also hide behind here and shoot. You know, I would even say fire rockets, right? Now, this is a pretty small ridgeline, and I feel like it would be close. You know, I haven't tested this, right? And like I said, I don't even think I've played this in multiplayer, this map, right? But weirdly, in a niche way, this might be a map where like firebomb throwers maybe could like in a niche way be effective. Right, you line them up here. Okay, they're just out of right, like out of that direct line of fire for matchlocks and stuff, and they can probably. I feel like right here they would probably just reach the edge, right? But somewhere right, like right here, right? If you were to hide them right here, right, you put them there. If you could somehow get a matchlock right here, but you probably wouldn't even need it, as long as you had another piece of infantry right here with some firebomb throwers right behind, or even ninjas, right, which is usually the better. If you want to have some grenades to throw, the ninjas would usually be people's choice to bring. Probably throw them over pretty effectively, actually, and with cover, right, not just get diced up by matchlocks. Not that I mean, matchlocks maybe would focus there, or someone would focus it on them, but just something to think about, right? Like a weird map where maybe firebomb throwers could be used, but that's kind of beside the point. Just trying to assess, right, the actual distance here, how much, right, how much advantage of cover, and then the ability to attack dead space is. So aside from that, right, the next, right, we have the major terrain feature of the ridge right here in the middle, okay, and I think these 2 little pockets of trees, right, it'll only be, I think it's one of those things, right, if you don't win the ridge, if you don't get control of the ridge, right, it's almost like these little pockets of trees will give you maybe that little bit of a fighting chance in certain situations, right, give yourself a little bit of cover, okay, and because of the angle, right, I think even like maybe the middle here, but getting down in here, there's a good chance, right, you get matchlocks right on top of the hill there, they're still going to have the line of fire into you. So that's just something to be aware of, right, like this little pocket of water, this little trench isn't really cover. They're gonna be able to fucking shoot into the whole thing, right? This side might be a little bit better, but still, they're gonna dice you up, right? Not much cover there. So I think getting here and not being stuck, right? Right now, technically, on this army, if I could get my enemy stuck in here, I would feel really good, right? And having control of the ridge, okay? Being on top of the ridge, right? In a lot of ways, right? You're a little bit more exposed, all right? But you have the high ground advantages, right? And this game will give you some advantage to having the high ground, okay? So I think in this situation, it is more important. And really, if you get control of that, and they're trying to hide into the woods, right, from matchlocks or whatever, ideally, it shouldn't matter that much because you can just go get them, or you should try and go get them, right? Well, I shouldn't 100% say that. Every battle is different, and you need to adapt as it goes. But so with that being said, right, but we got all these pockets of water around here, so, right, I already immediately think balanced or skirmish armies are actually best for this map because of that, okay? Now, rush armies can definitely, right, rush armies I do think work in a lot of places and spaces, but one thing, if you're rushing on this map, I don't think this is actually the best map for cavalry, right? And it's mostly because of these pockets of water. Now, you're always usually going to bring some cavalry. You want cavalry. You want to have that mobility and flexibility on the battlefield. But I wouldn't say that this is the most effective map for cavalry because of all these pockets of water that they can get stuck in. They're kind of littered all over the map. So unless you're being super micro intensive, there's probably a lot of chances that you're going to get them stuck in the water, right? Like if I were just to click over here, okay, as they run over there, they're going to run through this water, and that water, it'll slow them down, okay? And unless I was like waypointing them, all right, oh, hitting control instead of shift, but yeah, I see how that got silly real quick, right? But right, if you hold shift, set your waypoints, it's like you can avoid them. You can use the trees, right, to maybe, because they are set up where you can make some sneaky maneuvers through the trees, depending on the situation in the battlefield, right? Especially like this one, like I could have deployed in here if I remember correctly. It ended on the edge of, right, so you can technically hide and move some troops a little bit. However, right, these aren't super connected forest systems, so not the biggest ambush map, but there is absolutely ambush opportunities, right? Especially if you have some Kisho training or whatnot. There's opportunity for it. However, I don't know if I would consider this an ambush type of map. So, nor a real cavalry beneficial map. Although you're going to have some cav, right? You should. So I think this map is really well built for balanced and skirmish armies, actually, to really take advantage of the terrain, the diversity of this terrain. So, yeah, with that being said, right, so 3 dojos, but I think controlling this ridge, right, and often the dojos are what's going to determine how this battle, or how any battle, is actually going to be pushed and unfold. But I think in a lot of respects on this map, gaining control of this ridge, especially if you're trying to win gunfights, is really important because of the ability for it to provide you great cover, and then if you can get on top of it and control the top of it, you're just going to be able to probably impose your will upon the enemy, and that's either side. And again, right, for whatever reason, for most maps, it seems to benefit, I'll say this, it's just like quick assessments, benefit the host side. Like, I always feel like, right, the major terrain feature on a map seems to be a little closer, but they are built to be balanced enough, so, right, but I think controlling the ridge, right, especially if there are no dojos, is exceptionally important. And bringing a balanced army or a skirmish army would do you well here. Especially because if you're skirmishing, say you take control of this but you decide to skirmish back, maybe they bring a rush. There is a lot of space to skirmish back into, right, where it's all flat, so matchlocks will still be effective, bows will be effective, you get them into these pockets of water, and you can probably put out some high damage. So, anyways, this is Alpine Ridge. Yeah, honestly, I kind of like the potential of some of the things that can be done with this map. Like I said, I don't think I've actually ever played it online. So, it looks like I'll have to look to do it here at some point. Awesome. If you came across the video, I hope you learned something. I hope it helped. If you disagree with anything I said, feel free to let me know. Believe me, you know, there's real world and there's a video game, and this is a game, and a lot of you are a lot better, so you guys can tell me what's up. But continue to learn, continue to get after it. Let's have a good time. Have a good one. This is Alpine Ridge. Peace.